time and time again, we've seen President Donald Trump weather scandals, if you like. Do you think, though, this one is maybe too big for him to avoid? Will this bring about change?
Yeah, well, I'm not an oracle, impossible to say, Eve. But look, you're absolutely right. The problem here is that this has become a presidency which has been so littered with the entire landscape of his presidency, with scandals and crises and headlines a day. You know, I cover this stuff and I have trouble keeping track of it. You know, I can imagine that someone watching this from a distance, you could barely remember yesterday's scandal. The question is something else going to erupt or detonate on, you know, in the headlines in the next news cycle, 2 news cycles from now? We not forget all about this, but it's pushed off to the periphery, to the fringes. You sort of, you know, attach lesser importance to it. Already those Amoroso tapes from from a week ago, barely a few days ago, we're not even talking about it anymore. So the question is, if journalists, if paid journalists, if those covering Washington, my colleague in Washington, Phil Crowther, you know, if he is breathless trying to keep up with the churn of the scandal in the Trump administration, imagine voters watching this a lot from afar. Do they even care? A lot of people, you know, in the financial world, they say you write off certain things. It means you expect something to happen to a company or you already anticipate something. So when the actual earnings reports come in, it doesn't cause as much of a financial hit. There's a little bit of the same phenomenon right now in the Trump presidency. Trump's supporters, his diehard supporters, they are wedded to him come what may, and they are not going to abandon him. Others sort of have come to expect this in the Trump presidency. So in that sense, there's that financial sense of they write off these types of things. They say, yeah, we know that he has some perhaps challenges and issues sometimes with on these ethical issues, on these scandals, but at the end of the day, we generally like his policies, so we're going to stick with him. So that's where it becomes a very sticky question. How much will this shift that needle? And like I said, the jury really is out. I'm not trying to sit on the fence.
But you do mention the voters and what they think, and those midterm elections are looming.
Yes.
Is this changing the way campaigns even going into that vote?
It is. What it is changing is we are seeing signs of a changing sort of dialogue. Until now, what the totem has been among, you know, media pundits, among a lot of political analysts, has been that Trump's base is Trump's base. They don't abandon him. Trump can weather crises that would fall any other president, that a lesser president would collapse on. It may be changing in that even staunch Republicans and even those who have stuck by Trump by now are at least in some of their rhetoric in the past 24, 48 hours have struck a slightly more cautionary tone. One senior Republican in Congress basically saying anyone who says that this is not disturbing is not being honest, and urging fellow Republicans not to go immediately on the attack or defense around these issues unless they know enough that they could still defend that position 3 months from now. So that's coming from Republicans. Democrats, obviously looking ahead to the midterms, are thinking of should they raise the I word, the impeachment word, which they've been extremely wary of doing, trying to stick to economic issues, healthcare issues, and not trying to bring up the corruption issues against Trump.
And indeed, a lot of Democrats saying that first let the Mueller investigation do its job. If nothing else, has these cases reinvigorated that investigation?
Reinvigorated, yes, in the sense that Mueller has been, by his mandate, he has not been allowed to talk about what he's doing. He has had to remain discreet. He has had to sort of plug away quietly behind the scenes. A stark contrast, if ever there was one, to what we have seen, the public image of Donald Trump, going on cable news networks, going to rallies, making tweet after tweet, absolutely hammering away at Robert Mueller, threatening at times, you know, veiled and not so veiled, to try to perhaps remove him. That is a strategy that has alarmed and raised eyebrows among some in his own party, fearing that if Trump were to act too aggressively and try to remove the special counsel, that could be seen as a politically, if not suicidal move, a very damaging move. The other thing that they're afraid of with the Mueller investigation is if Trump sort of tries to pardon his allies or people that are implicated, as we've just seen his lawyer, Manafort was in this investigation. Trump does have the executive presidential pardon, the power to pardon these people. But if he does, it might not be that politically astute to do so. What we can say is Mueller, this was his biggest victory to date, if you're keeping score in a sense, his first big conviction in this inquiry. And so in that sense, he has right now the momentum on his side, and he right now, it will be harder for Trump to discredit him as easily as he has by calling this a rigged witch hunt.